Hello, hello. Here we are again, coming to you from Broadcast Team Alpha on 44 different platforms around the world, and we're going to have some fun tonight. Maybe we'll even learn something from a master of things that we never knew existed. And for I'm the host tonight. My name is Aage, and my co-host Nori could not make it. So we'll try to suffer through it all on our own here. Me and San, we'll try to make it all right. And also we are transmitting on the Cosmic Awakening Network. And guys, you got to go over and have a look at those people because they got close to 50 different shows on there. They do conferences and they do shows and they do all kinds of things. And these are shows about all the stuff that we're not supposed to know about, but you and me need to know about it. So I also want to let you know how you can get in touch with myself and Nori. Go to broadcastteamalpha.com and send us a message, and we'll get the email and we'll get back to you and we'll see what we can do for you. And I also want to let you know that Nori and I, 3 years ago, we created a spiritual think tank. That's what I call it because there is no other way to explain it. And there are times when we looks like we create out of seemingly nothing. We get a bunch of people together, we join minds together, and we visualize and intend for things to happen. And often it does, because we place our request to the universe into the quantum, and then we pull it back into the physical. So if you want to be something that is bigger than yourself, send us an email to themastermindconnection@gmail.com, and I'll send you a link and some information, and you can come and check it out and see if you want to be part of something like that. Maybe you also will be able to create something for yourself. Anything. We have had miraculous healings. We have windfall economics. We have all kinds of stuff, goofy stuff that shouldn't happen, but it does. So anyway, I want to now introduce the guest for you because I've been looking forward to this because I don't know, he's got some information that very few people does. His name is San Qing. I probably butchered that one, did I?
Oh, no,
Or
no, that's fine. San Qing is perfect. There you go.
okay, I got close. That's good enough.
Yeah, it's perfect.
All right. And for there are people that want to surf the website while they're listening, I'll tell you his website is theway126.com. Theway126.com. And he is also all over social media. That is, of course, Facebook and everywhere else. And you can find him under San Qing. And you're going to learn some more things than what you're going to hear tonight if you seek him out on social media. Uh, he is a colleague of sorts. Because he also has a very successful podcast of his own. And he's got a lot of people listening to him every week. And he is so much more. He is a Taoist master and a profound healer, and has been doing this for over 30 years. And he's been teaching and helping people. He teaches Qigong, Neigong, and I want to know the difference between those two because I've never gotten that straight. So I'll remember to ask him that one. And and he is also a channel from, I guess I should say, the higher spiritual realms. His teachers, as he called the three pure ones and the Tao, has taught him a lot. And he spent some extensive time in the Far East and gaining knowledge. And when knowledge is paired with 30 years of experience, that is when miracles happen. So he is an author. I told you his website, and welcome to the show there, San.
Thank you for having me, my dear friend. I'm very excited about this conversation. It's always an incredible divine moment when we merge.
Yeah, you're a world traveler in some sorts, and you've been in the Far East. And tell us a little bit about why did you do this? Why did you end up going this path instead of staying in the business world and becoming a millionaire like everybody else? And maybe you have more fun, but tell us what brought you onto this path. And then I would love to hear some of your wild stories from the mountains
Mhm.
of the Far
Oh yeah,
East.
absolutely, absolutely. Yeah, it's interesting. You progress as a young boy. I realized I had this ability to look through objects, people, places, and that set me on more desire to find out what that secret superpower was, which led me into pursuing, superheroes. I had this idea that, the superpowers existed within you. And from the age of 4, I started to realize I had this ability. And then it grew into an inquiry where I wanted to look like a superhero. So it led me to feeling into that physicality, which is part of, accessing and activating the earlier or more grounding energy centers of the physical body. So
Mm.
at the age of 10, I was drawn into being obsessive with powerlifting and bodybuilding. And that took me on a path of reading a book by the name of The Education of a Bodybuilder by Arnold Schwarzenegger. So then I lived the literally a priest-like path, eating eggs and vegetables and meat and chicken as if I was like some type of priest on some sort of a monastic realization. And furthermore, it became an obsession that by the age of 15, I was doing things like competing in powerlifting and bodybuilding. I had harnessed this power that I had within me that I read in a book, said that it was possible. I applied that. And then what happened was it led me to my late teens where a voice was going off in my head telling me that I needed to find meditation when I had a very serious path that I'd been working through from the age of 10 to 17. So I was fasting at 10 when back in those days when people didn't know what that really was. It was like the
No.
closest thing to that would have been, someone getting on the kick. It's like everything is regenerated and repurposed. People need to understand this. If you're on a paleo or a keto diet, then if you go back in history, you might remember this guy by the name of Atkins, who literally blasted, the last 50 or 60 years of people's obsession with weight loss using these type of techniques. And they're ancient techniques. Fasting is an ancient technique. It's
Yeah.
something that has been used in all indigenous practices. I've been using it consciously for many, many decades. So that led me to meditation. I had no real idea what that was because I was very physical. All I want to do is pick things up, crush things. I'd really amassed this potential where I was like starting to hit numbers that were superhuman. And I had no
Mm-hmm.
indication that they weren't possible. Little did I know by my late teens that, Arnold Schwarzenegger was using other things to, basically develop his physique that was not internal, it was external. And I
Yeah.
still never let go of my mind being able to realize that I can craft and create things. So from that point, with the voice in my head, I found the classifieds. It's called a newspaper for all my kids that go, "What is that, Dad? I don't know what that is. I've never seen that before." And so I looked up what they called a meditation class. Now, meditation class back in those days was Hare Krishnas, alfalfa sprouts, hairy armpits, people that were love, peace, love, dove. We're talking about a whole different perspective of what we consider spirituality. And to this day, it's evolved so much. So from that, I started a meditation class. I'd never experienced meditation before. I had no idea, no expectation at all. So I turn up to this rec center, and this woman who claimed she was a Grand Master, she was about 4 feet high. I was a gorilla. I looked like an overgrown ape without hair. I turn up to this meditation class. I'm a beggar. A beggar can't be chooser. So I turn up to this class. It's a youth center in the middle of a ghetto. I'm fearful for my life. I pull up there. I walk up the stairs. I walk through the door. I see half a dozen misfits like myself that were putting themselves in a position that looked somewhat painful. They call it the lotus position. So I sit on the ground. She says, come in, sit down. I sit down. I'm reaching over as if I'm in complete pain. My back is in pain. I can't posture myself to this lotus position. I'm just like an overgrown gorilla trying to scratch his ass. That's really what it turned out to be. So I'm sitting there. I'm in pain. I'm hearing noises outside. We're in a really noisy neighborhood. Dogs barking, people screaming, ambulances, the whole thing. I am not going to be able to focus on this thing that they call stillness of the mind. They call it meditation, whatever it is. I never experienced it before. So what happened was I sat there and I really was about to give up. I'm like, this is not going to work for me. I can't. I'm distracted. All this stuff. I mean, the definition of it is this. And I've come from a physicality, tactile experience that has been nurtured over my childhood, that this is what I'm about, embodying physical. And so I'm sitting there and I'm in pain. My back is hurting. I can't concentrate because everything's going on. And this woman stands in the middle of a half circle of people that are in their lotus position. And I'm just like literally just trying to just survive. And she said, I want you to listen to my voice. And with my eyes open, she said, I want you to listen to my voice. And I'm thinking, this ain't going to work. I don't know what it is. I should get up and leave right now. They're doing their meditation thing. And then everything will fall away. And the sound in that room disappeared, Aage. For 15 minutes, everything disappeared. There was no sound. And I had captured this superpower that I was looking for my whole childhood, the ability to stop sound completely. I was obsessed from that moment. What is this superpower? How can you do it? I'm onto something. This was a pivotal moment in my self-realization. The following day, I looked up another workshop. This voice said to me, go and find other spiritual activities. So the next day, I go to a channeling class. I channeled that same day. I walked through the door. This guy looks at me and goes, what are you doing here? I look around the room, a bunch of hippies, and he's like, you're probably in the wrong place, my friend. I'm like, no, I'm here to do the channeling class. And they're like, sure you are. No, I think you're in the wrong place. And I'm like, no. That's what I'm here for. And he's like, no, this is not for you. And I'm like, honestly, I read that it's a channeling class. Let me, can I participate? All right, I'll take you $10. So I'm sitting there and he postures himself. He calls in his guides, sets up the whole environment. And I become the entertainment and the focus of about 20 or 30 people as I channel Latsu for the first time and enters my body. I emit heat that is at a degree that people are taking out sticks and marshmallows and cooking them around the fireplace. And this guru that had spent 60 years consciously pursuing channeling was dumbfounded that I could access this information. Of course, we understand we're just remembering who we are. This is exactly what happens when you're on a path of spiritual enlightenment.
Oh boy. I just had a notice, a little window saying that I had weak internet connection. So whatever happened, if anything happens, I'll be right back. But what you are talking about relates to what I went through. When I went to the first meditation class, I was you.
Yeah.
And I tell you that people out there listening to this, they must understand that the initial hardship that you see that is so big that you think you can't do it, work through the first challenges and things open up for everybody. They will get somewhere. They will have experiences like you're talking about. What you're talking about is not uncommon. People have these things. It does happen.
Well,
So,
well, I mean, that's what I mean, what's most important is validating that for someone who's so in depth in a method and training and ritual that are thousands of years old that have been handed down from generation to generation, such as myself and two lineages of Taoism as an ordained priest, this was necessary to validate what it was that I experienced. So, what happened was I channeled Latsu. At this point, I believe I'm having a psychotic break because I went from never understanding what meditation was to meditating to the following day, channeling this entity they claim is, a spirit. But the worst part was it was all the fears of my childhood. And the reason that was so relevant was I was seeing this entity that was Latsu with my eyes open and hearing his voice after I connected with him and he was coming through my body. So all of a sudden now this transmission is evident. I believe I'm having a psychotic break because my childhood was scattered with a bunch of my friends who were all usual sort of teenage challenges, right? Being able to handle the stressor and the adaptation of being a young child merging into adulthood through the pressure of life itself. So I had about 20 childhood friends that disowned me at the age of 15 because I was that guy sitting. I was sitting in the corner of the room where we're all hanging out. And one of my buddies came up to me. I'm reading a muscle and fitness magazine. And he comes up to me and goes, "You got to go." And I'm like, "What are you talking about? You need to leave." And I'm like, "Whoa, we're buddies. We've been friends all this time." He's like, "Listen, you're a buzzkill. Unless you take LSD, ecstasy, or pot, you are killing my will to live." And I'm like, what does that even mean? Because you're just sitting here like just a big lug, just reading magazines. You're not engaging in all this other debauchery, and it's killing my will to live. You're Buzz Killington. I'm like, "But we're friends." "No, you got to go." And so what happened was my whole childhood was scattered with the 20 friends that I have. Today, I have one left from my childhood. All rest of them decided to end the narrative of their life, and we can edit this or whatever, but they took their own life into their own hands. Let me put it that way, in a narrative. All 19 of them. So now you have the struggle of these children that, and what I thought was, I never took any of these external stuff, yet I was very afraid that I was going to have us, because they went insane. They went mad. So I was afraid that I was going to have a psychotic break. And then it happened with the channeling. I was like, I'm insane. There's something going on. The following day led me to clairvoyant training, that instantly I accessed this information because the same teacher was teaching clairvoyance. And it's like, he's like, "What the hell? You got the channeling part, but you're not going to get this. I don't care what you say. Come into the class. I'm going to teach you a few things, but it's really not going to work for you. You're not the kind of candidate that's necessary to absorb this information." And I'm like, "I don't care. Let me have a go." So he literally showed me the list of things that would induce this very nature, this ability. He said, "Okay, this is what you need to do. Now show me you can do it." And it was almost like this condescending state where, "Go ahead. Now I've shown you how to access this. Give me a reading. Read who I am." And I'm like, "Okay. I mean, right now, what have I got to lose? I see it, some dead gray guy that is some ancient character. I'm hearing his voice. I'm literally at the precipice of losing all things that I know as reality. Why not? At this point, what do I have to lose?" He goes, give me a reading." And I'm like, "Okay, well, you've given me this list. I'm going through the list. Okay. I'm going to take a deep breath in. I'm going to find the focal point. I'm then going to spread my attention out over 8 different things. There was a list of how it was taken care of. And he goes, give me something, anything. And I'm like, okay. There's an entity telling me that if you don't continue to give them all the students that you're acquiring, and they're taking they're leeching their energy, this energy will take your life. And he's like, whoa, 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 whoa. And he freaked out. And he's like, all right, get up, get up, get up, get up. Let's go in the other room, other room, other room. And I'm like, whoa, 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 what's going on? And he goes, sit down. And I'm like, okay. And I'm starting to think, what did I say? And he goes, listen, where did you get, how did you get that? I'm like, no offense. You told me that I can read. This is how you're supposed to read energy. And this energy came in and told me exactly what I'm telling you. And he was like pale and white. I'm like, is that true? I wasn't concerned about how ominous the agenda of this particular guy was and what he was doing with the energy of his students. It was more, this is correct. This information is actually valid. And he's like, listen, I need you to understand the circumstance. I was like, am I right? Did I get it? Am I correct? And he's like, oh my goodness. I need you to understand why I'm doing this. I'm like, holy crap. This is for real. I can actually do this. This is actually information that's real. I was freaking out. I was absolutely freaking out. He's like, you need to understand it's a circumstance. I get this ability. I can remote view and all this kind of stuff. He's trying to confess it to me. And I said, I can't believe this information is correct. So literally that day, I activated within the night. By the next day, I woke up and activated every energy, every information was accessible to me. I could see auras, colors, information just pulsating in front of me with my eyes open. Now, this was part of the clairvoyance activation. The following day, I activated a distant healing where you can't make this up. I get back from this class, I get taught distant healing. It's nothing more than a sheet where you're going and clicking off the stuff. This is what I try and tell my students. It's a method. If you understand the method and you activate it within yourself, you have the ability. Everyone has the ability. And so yep. I literally went to the next day where I'm now witnessing a distant healing through a circumstance where this woman had rolled her ankle. And from her ankle, what happened was we were having a conversation over the phone. In those days, you had rotary phones, very long time ago. And I'm talking to this woman, and she's like, I've got a swollen ankle. I can't see you. I said, all right, well, maybe we'll catch up next week. And I went, no, hang on. Let me try something. And I had this just finished distant healing training. And I was like, let me try this. I said, this is going to seem a little funny. I'm going to do a few things. And then in the end, I'm going to read out this thing. It's called an incantation. And don't be too concerned by it. Just let me follow through on it. And she's like, well, you just hurry up. I just want you to be finished. Just be done. I'm like, okay. So I went through the list. I did all the things that were necessary. Then I read the incantation, which was so benign. Heal, 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 heal. And then next minute I hear expletives coming out of the phone. And she's screaming at me going, what kind of sorcery are you up to? I'm like, what are you talking about? My ankle shrunk before my very eyes. And now I'm standing on it. And I'm like, no way. I was like, there's no way. You're just blowing smoke. So from that situation, I head over to her house. She goes, check it out for yourself. There was Polaroids. She has a Polaroid camera. People used to love doing that. She take photos of everything. Took a photo of her ankle. She ran to me as I walked through her front door. And she gave me a big hug. And I'm like, okay, what's going on? This is just a joke, clearly. There's no, you're you're running. And she's like, check this photo out. And her ankle was the size of a watermelon. She had severely sprained it. And she was living at home with her mother. And her mother's sitting on a couch. And she's puffing away. And this is like something out of some classic Harry Potter movie. And I'm just like used to the secondhand smoke of being alive at that time or era of the year. And so I'm breathing it in, and their mother goes, I always knew you were a healer. And I'm like, what are you talking about? What what are you talking about? I always knew you were a healer. I'm like, okay, I'm going from meditation to channeling to clairvoyant stuff to now a distant healing. And this woman's telling me I'm a healer. I'm about to have a psychotic break. This is all one day after another, Aage. One day after another,
Yeah.
all within one period. The following day, she goes, I need you. I don't believe in doctors. I need you to come over and check my foot out. And I'm like, at this point, what does it matter? I mean, this is insane at this point. What am I? Who am I? What am I going? I'm probably going to lose my mind. I'm determined to try and fight it, but I think it's going to happen. This is what's happened to all my friends. I guess it was just a bad run. This is what's going to happen. So I turn up the next day. She was extremely bloated. Her remedy for her life was a pack of cigarettes and a bottle of vodka. She had many people around her that were entertaining her as someone who had enough money to have people to assist her with everything. Okay. So I turn up to her house and she has this pain in her foot. She goes, take a look at it. I don't think she's seen her foot in 20 years. She's sitting there completely bloated. Her foot's up on a stool. And I go, okay, what do you want me to do? Just take a look at it. It hurts. You know, you're the healer. I'm like, yeah, sure. At this point, why not? I'm insane. Why not? I go down, I literally kneel down. At this point, I have a dialogue with this old guy that I'm sitting with my eyes open. I'm having a break. There's no way. I mean, that's what's going on. It's insanity. All this stuff is happening one day after another. And I pull a sock off and I freak out. I'm looking at a gangrenous foot that needs to be amputated. And in my mind, I'm like, let's get this woman to the hospital right now. Has to go. And I've got Latsu going, no. And I'm like, what do you mean, no? No, I'm hearing these guys' voice and I'm thinking, no to what? You're going to witness a healing today. And I'm like, you've got to be kidding me. And so this is going on. She's puffing away. So how's it going down there? I'm like, I can't do this anymore. This is too much. What did I do? What Pandora's box did I open? One event after another that put me into a place where I'm almost in a psychotic, having a psychotic episode, in my opinion. And I've got this entity that I channeled 3 days ago that's now telling me that I'm going to witness a healing. And that same moment, in 40 minutes, I watched gangrenous flesh go back to pink in color in 40 minutes before my very eyes. And so I'm like, holy crap. It just doesn't get any better than that. This is like the next level. I am insane. And so that event, go ahead.
There's a question rising out of this.
Yep.
It is somewhat unusual, but what do you think, or should I say, where do you think that ability came from? Do you think you were born with it? Or was it some imposition of an outside influence that gave it to you?
Looking deeper, once this all was activated, by the end of that episode where I witnessed the healing, I went on a journey where I spent another week in what someone would call 2 days in this spiritual age, a dark night of the soul. I had breaking after breaking. I had every thought, every feeling, every emotion that I could not escape for 5 days straight. And I was unable to connect to my teacher at the time. And so I literally, by the 3rd day in, I wanted to just end it. I was at the point where I can't even operate. I'm so overwhelmed with the pressure of all this information coming in that I'm insane. There's something wrong with me. And so I would go into a movie theater and see something as benign as a woman walking across the screen that's naked, and I would throw up in front of the person in front of me in the theater. I was like, I'm done. I've made the worst mistake of my life. I thought I avoided it when I was a young man. I thought I was doing all the things that were necessary for me to have a great, healthy, rich life, and it went sideways. This brings me back when I was 8. I was hit by a car head on, and I left my body for over an hour, and I did not pull myself back into my body until after they dropped my body down on a gurney in an ambulance. And I watched as my body left, I flew off into the sky like Peter Pan. I witnessed my mother running to my lifeless body, and I was just floating around. Now, in greater understanding of this, I've done this 1,000 times over as a Taoist priest. Mm-hmm. And as refining myself as an immortal, this is just another day in the office. And since then, I witness these things on a daily basis. Yeah. So if you're talking about healing, I've seen it all. Whether it's the gangrenous flesh, bones fuse, gashes seal before my very eyes, tumors disappear. This is normal and very normal for anybody because you're obtaining a resonance. It's a developed skill. And that's what triggered the desire. And that's where Lao Tzu took me on that journey to find my path back to my origins and my nature within the Eastern culture and understanding how deep that relationship was. So when you go and you rewind it, you can stand back. Hindsight is 20/20 and go, holy Moses, this all adds up. But what's necessary is what I always remind people is you can have this epiphany and this knowing instantaneously listening to our conversation, because I experienced it. And of course, you experienced it with your own admission, sharing your own journey. You experienced this instant remembrance that takes place. Mm-hmm. And what it comes down to when you look at it from an alchemical process is your ability to activate these different levels of sensory perception. And once you do that, all of a sudden, all bets are off. Your ability to obtain deeper knowledge and understanding is never ending, or furthermore, what we like to refer to within Taoism, when you accept you know nothing, you know everything. It's part of realizing that instead of being scattered with your processes, that you stay focused on one path. I think the spiritual motto these days is I'll take a bit from here, a bit from here, a bit from here, a bit from here. I think that's fantastic. Yet the most important thing anyone should have for their own self-realization is evidence. If you can't have evidence, then it's kind of like a moot point where, okay, this is exciting. I've got this concept in my mind, which you and I have probably come across many times. And you, my friend, your own admission and in the incredible amount of years that you have been committed and devoted to that spiritual knowing and path of your own cultivation, this has to happen with evidence, or it's just a transitory delusional state.
Yeah, and that's where the saying comes, for the one who have had the experience, no explanation is necessary. But for the one who have not had the experience, no explanation is possible.
Yeah. I mean, that was the triggering point. Now, on that path, and then getting back to my origins within a Taoist ordinance or being ordained as a priest, that was an interesting path of self-realization. Some of the most valuable moments was my exploration through the bowels of Chinatown in San Francisco.
Yeah.
That was...
I see now that we are down to the bottom of the hour. And for those of you that joined us late, we are talking with San Qing, a Taoist master. And he has some tremendous stories to tell us about things that he has done and you can do, because everybody can once they know how. And that's where we mostly fall short. We see other people doing things, but we don't know how because we don't really ask them necessarily. But once we know how, everything works. So listen really close to him, because I want him to talk a little bit about the how. The why you will create within yourself. And then you go out and find the how. So there we are, San. What do you think? There is a method through everything. Maybe we could talk a little bit about those methods.
Yeah. Look, the method is really critical. It's I refer to it as the method of the madness. And so most people get a divine spark, a taste of the spiritual dragon. They start with that desire. The desire turns into inquiry. Inquiry starts to fluff up a little contemplation. Contemplation births curiosity. Curiosity goes into what we call hopium. Hopium is a beautiful, potent state for any human being's journey to self-realization. It is met with a belief system. The belief system is nourished with experience. That is the key ingredient to your own self-realization and mastery. You must be able to experience something and validate what you consider an absolute truth for yourself. Otherwise, it's transitory, delusional. And when you do the experience, and when you meet it with experience, when you meet it with that, the validation is knowing. And so that knowing is part of the mastery. So alchemy for Taoists has been an ongoing pursuit and a mastery that goes back tens of thousands of years. And so how you assume to merge the universe with yourself comes with that alchemical process. When you activate the internal alchemy and architecture within you, you start to access heightened states of awareness that give you the developmental skills that we consider under one blanket called sensory perception. You might define it as clairvoyance, mediumship, channeling, healing. It's all the same once you understand the fundamentals. And it comes back to the potency of realizing what is the most valuable currency in this material state. You would call it a realm, a dimension, however you want to perceive it. It's your attention. Now, your attention is met with intention, which forms this potential. It's energy. That's what we're working in within this material state, energy potential. You understand that once you form that, whether it's a cell phone, whether it's a bottle, whether it's the camera, you, me, you have to be able to develop that skill. Each energy potential has vibratory, frequential, and then ultimately a resonance signature. That signature will be determinative by the individual's ability to acquire that state. So if you're developing something like levitation, and you are on your journey of self-realization, and that's one of your superpowers that you are committed to acquiring, there are certain levels of development to reverse and invert the yang energy to the yin energy through that particular mastery. That requires your attention to your physical foundations, and then what that means to connect and disconnect the physical body to the energy body. And so when you are able to balance those two and you invert the yang energy into the physical body, it has a mirroring effect, which becomes basically you are weightless. And so this is a process of natural selection, because the individual will have to show me their acquired state for their commitment of their cultivation. And when I show them a method of cultivation, they must meet it with their own dedication to that, and that will be self-evident. And if it's not met, then they can't access the next point of awareness that gives them the ability to merge what we merge the sun, the earth, and the moon. And the moon's potency is a true core origins of what we call the primordial mother within Taoism. That primordial mother is the void. When you access the void, it is the animation behind the animation that is beyond what you consider consciousness. That is the actual essence of all things. So consciousness is another layered effect that is part of what you're experiencing as the now moment. We are talking about accessing the substance behind the substance. And when you connect those energies, and from a physiological level, you're tapping into what we call the Mingmen, which is the Jing, which is within your kidneys. And there's a very specific processes as you start to fortify the lower dantian as a container to be able to hold this potent immortal elixir that you have to cultivate for you to acquire the inverted effects that makes your body weightless, that you can then obtain what some people would call an ascended state of awareness, where you're now inverting, transferring all material to non-material, and you're able to levitate. So I'm using that as an example. Furthermore, things like telekinesis, telepathy, pyrokinesis, these are all stages. Most people that acquire or are obsessed with pyrokinesis will back off their foot from the pedal. Why is that? Because they get caught in the external effects of absorbing yang, inverting it, and then you burn the candle at two ends. So the effect is that I've never met anyone that becomes obsessed with that particular power, sense, that you acquire something that is forever lasting. What will happen is you will get an event where you will be able to transmit it. And what will happen is it will be met with an imminent demise, furthermore, sucking from the core energy of your body, and you will not be able to hold that ability. I've never met anyone to be able to hold it. I've never been obsessed by it. I give it to students that meet the requirements to develop that skill. But what happens is people burn the candle at two ends, and the evidence becomes your mortality. People 30, 40 years ago, when I started this journey, that were also pursuing spiritual enlightenment, they're all dead. Those healers are gone because they were forever ignoring the fundamental building blocks that are necessary to sustain this potency.
When you talk about burning the candle at both ends, I think the key there is for one end of a candle, if it is driven by ego, it will destroy you. Because the other end of the candle might be pure enough. You say, I want the knowledge, I want to do something good for the world, but I want to take the credit too. And then you burn it down from the other end, and then when it gets to the middle, like you said, it could take your life.
Well, it becomes problematic. I've met many people. There's only ever been 3 people I've ever met that could levitate. 2 were within the jungles of Indonesia, Kundalini experts, and 1 was one of my students that I taught this technique to. The amount of fundamental biological time that it takes to cultivate these particular superpowers can literally consume a tremendous amount of your timeline as a human being. And there's nothing wrong with it. But what's most important is once you meet that level of adaptation, you must be able to turn it back in and dissolve it and return back to the what we call the elastic center point, the Wu Ji, the primordial mother, between yin and yang. And so if you do not meet that, you become obsessed. As you put it, it's egoic. You become obsessed with it, and that becomes your identity, not realizing that. So within those 3 people that can do that, and one of them being my students, and a lot of people are like, well, Jeffo, why don't you do it? Because I have no interest in it. It doesn't excite me. It's not, what excites me is witnessing physical healing, mental, emotional, spiritual stuff. That excites me. That fires that spark of desire to continue to witness what people consider miracles. Now, from that level of ascension, you can acquire a state of knowing, but that does not come from obsessing over I'm a medium, a channeler, a healer, I'm a light worker, I'm a clairvoyant. These are all identities that can be met with a diminished return if you do not continue to expand from the adaptation. Once you adapt, the stressor of that will be consumed, and you will complete that cycle and then birth into a new one, which is the symbiosis of Taoism. That means that you're moving between the yin and yang, and the evidence is birth, completion, birth, completion, birth, completion. It is never ending. You can access that what we call the Wu Ji, the primordial mother, at any moment, which is unified. It is whole. And from that's where the sparks of miracles take place. But you have to be able to obtain that resonance. So when I refer to energy potential, sensory perception potential, just because you're a medium, a channel, a healer, a light worker, that doesn't make you ascended. I've met a lot of people that have acquired mastery in energy potential that are very deficient in their personality. It doesn't make them a path of this refined expansion of what we consider the knowing, the primordial mother, the unification, Tao, God, Buddha. This is not evident. It's just a mastered state. And when you become obsessed with it, it becomes like a big pile of, doo-doo in the middle of a river. The river, fluidity-wise, will always wear that down. Water goes where no man can. And so understand that no matter how much you resist the potency of the egoic state of identity, you will always have an option to return to your default, which is perfection manifest within a Taoist path. And then what happens is your default does not require your participation. Your default does not require you to be participatory in anything. It requires you to move out of the way and realize within that present moment that is the only point of healing. You are no place, no person, no thing. You are all places, all people, all things at once, which is what we call the bellows effect. So you're contracting, expanding at the same time. This gives you back to completion, creation, which is accessible to anyone. But this is where the secret source comes in. You have to cultivate that resonance, because now the container, if not met with some type of mastery, you will not be able to hold that resonance. The only reason you transition to another life is because your container has served its purpose and it no longer is able to maintain the charge. It's no longer being able to harness or hold that energy because of the circumstance. So within Taoist path, we always cultivate from the physicality, nourishing this container so that you can hold the energy and what we call the qi, which is the energy, and furthermore, the shen, that is the spirit. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Now, a little while you mentioned levitation. And when it comes to that, I remember reading about a guy 1,990 years about that time. He is supposed to have walked on the water. You know him as Jesus, but I have no problem with somebody walking on the water. First of all, my martial art master, he showed me something that made it totally believable for me. So when you're talking about that, it is all in the process. It's in the training of the mind. And these things are possible. It may take more than about 2 days and 14, a few hours to do that. But then again, good things comes to the one that waits, right? We gotta give it the time.
Yeah. I mean, most people tend to exhibit an example of levitation, like putting a body of water, maybe a swimming pool, laying down what they would call plastic tiles across the swimming pool, and then the actual practitioner will show you evidence of them being able to walk across it with using the contact or tactile effect of them contacting with the tile and floating across the water. And how that works mechanistically is understanding that every time the foot hits the ground, the practitioner is able to withdraw the energy from the physical body, which makes it weightless. And so when you are doing these things or showing exhibits of this type of practices, when I'm talking about the levitation, this is more an infantile way to start. You still go, look, I'm able to recalibrate the energy that is no longer within the physical body. I remove it. I turn into the willow. And this is a practice that most people that are starting out with levitation will start with something as simplistic as that. When I'm talking about levitation, I'm talking about witnessing someone float from the ground inches. Now, one of these Kundalini masters he was like 6 feet off the ground. I mean, your eyes just pop. But furthermore, it doesn't excite me enough. It's like, oh, that's great. Is that going to evoke a healing from me? No. And
No.
actually, he has his own limitations. He was actually quite deficient personally, and had a habit of chain smoking, and of course womanizing. Does that mean that he's a
Ah,
spiritual? It doesn't. But he was mastered in that state. Anyone can master these states. It's what happens with the effect of adaptation and stress
yeah.
that comes with true dissolving, and then you return to servitude and selflessness. Then you will know that you've returned to that mark.
Yeah.
But the distribution of the weight itself is a mastered state, because you are attached to the whole field. And so now everything you have access to, you have dominion, you are maestro to everything. And that's when you're able to effectively invert the energy when your foot touches the tile, when you're running, because none of these guys are walking. They're not floating, or they're hovering. Show me an example of anyone doing that. This is an entry-level way to start levitating. You use these types of techniques. But once you're there, it's an all-consuming thing that will be, in my opinion, self-destructive, because it takes up a tremendous amount of cultivational practice and time.
Yeah.
I've
Yeah.
met anyone that acquires it instantaneously. And I've never pursued the actual processes myself to determine whether I could do it any faster than I've seen others do it, which is years. Like these Kundalini masters were training for 10 and 12 years to obtain that state of awareness. I guess you can go down to the local store and entertain people outside the supermarket, getting tips and quarters. You're levitating. I mean, I don't know.
Yeah. Yeah.
There's a sense of awareness that comes with it that will shift anyone's consciousness. And just
Yeah.
understanding and having the ability in relation to a method, which is the same thing. Like something as simple as like taking my arm and driving a skewer through it and pulling it out, and there's no entry and exit point. That's a fundamental enjoyment that I get when I'm showing someone something that they would consider impossible. And it's just, hang on a second, I witnessed that. Where is it? What's going on? How did you do that? It's a state of awareness.
Yeah.
And you can transfer that energy very quickly. Once you're mastered, everything is instantaneous. It's not like a work me up. It's not like you're going into the gym and you got to slowly get the blood flowing in the muscle. You got to warm up. This is not how this works. Once you acquire this state of awareness, it becomes faster than light speed.
Yeah.
And it's permanent, a palpability.
I think that doing something like that, it really maybe it doesn't have all that much of a practical purpose, but it does have one good thing about it, and that is that it creates believability in the one you're talking to. So he say, okay, so you can do that. What else can I do?
And that's the purpose of it, Aage. That's the purpose of these. I think in some ancient practices, they call them siddhis or things of that nature. They're just sensory perception and abilities of integrating the Shen, which we call within Taoism, we take immortality and we crystallize it into the material state. That is where you have this unified perfection, where it spins off into telepathy, clairvoyance, telekinesis, pyrokinesis, psychokinesis, which is more common. But, these are all very mastered states that you can get to if you put your attention to it. As I continue on my path, I don't get lured in by the superpowers as much as I just enjoy the satisfaction of witnessing healing. Which brings me to, you want a quick story? The story is, I witnessed this woman. She had a cyst, a cyst in her breast. It was the size of a cantaloupe. She had some blocked duct. She was breastfeeding her child, and it was so sensitive. Like you'd just breathe on it, and she'd be screaming in pain. It was huge. It was like this. And when I connected with her, I instantly witnessed her cyst, it's huge cantaloupe. It rose to the top of the skin. The skin separated, and about a liter of pus poured out into her sink. And myself, and her husband was like, holy crap. And then it gets even better. You could see into the cavity of her chest, and then the skin sealed back up in front of our very eyes and left this very faint scar. And even every once in a while, it's been years now, and I'll call her on it, and it starts to transform and change shape. And every time she touches it, it connects her with a higher state of awareness. And it's like, it can't leave me when I see things of that nature and that sort of potency. And that particular frequency I would use on people's cysts and raise them to the top of the skin and pop them like a volcano. And it became a hobby of mine for many years. But then I realized I need to get back into the focus of things instead of being obsessed with one particular ability.
Yeah.
And this is what becomes problematic for anyone as a seeker to a knower, is these types of things. Does that make sense?
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. Boy, oh boy, I know that the healing part of the different things that you talked about is probably what at least people of higher consciousness would be more interested in. But I also know I have gotten to know a few magicians. And there was one magician back in Europe, Tore Torell was the guy's name. He was a Norwegian. He taught me hypnosis. And he said, there's he had some phenomenal shows all across Europe. And he said, there are some things that I do, he says, and it shouldn't work, but it does.
Right.
So I asked him, why do you think that is? And he says, I think he did a gesture or something like that, or he said, it's beyond me because it shouldn't work, but it does.
Well, I mean, that's basement level entry to any inquiry and what conscious and unconscious processes means. You should have a fundamental understanding of something as potent and as hypnosis to get a general idea of what consciousness and unconsciousness is in of itself. Because when you're able to even harness something that is all frequency, it's nothing more than that. It's nothing more, nothing less. But your ability to see evidence of that through this physical body as a tuning fork is part of the cultivational practice. This is where people going into monastic paths, sitting in the corner of a monastery for 20 years, meditating in a lotus position, obtaining what you consider enlightenment through leaving the body and be forever in this state of pure consciousness. And that fundamentally lets go of what is necessary to cultivate the material.
Yeah. I see now that, gosh, we only have about 4 minutes left of the show, but why don't you tell us where people can connect with you? Because you can help them with so many things, healings and knowledge, and I think you're running some classes from time to time. Tell us what you can help people with.
Sure, absolutely. The journey of self-awareness and self-realization, I can teach you the simplicity of mastering your emotions through many practices, including an app that I developed that you can get through my website. This will instantly harness your potential and have your ability to remove things that would be insurmountable. I mean, there's no way that you could possibly climb that mountain, which is just the psychological effects of the human condition. You can master that, or furthermore, you can go deeper into your spiritual state of awareness and develop skills that can awaken your own knowing and others by energy healing that will come in all forms: mental, emotional, physical, spiritual. And you can go through the website. You can come and find me on social media, through the podcast. And I do take application for students. That's on a case-by-case basis. It depends on the individual. And there's certain requirements that are necessary, because people get very excited. They want what is unobtainable. And I think that's exciting. That's the first desire and spark that's necessary for you to go on your own journey of self-realization. Yet you must meet it with a certain level of adaptation that will come from removing the limitations of just psychological or physiological, and meet those two together and awaken the spiritual nature of who you are.
Yeah. Yeah. Do you have any classes coming up shortly that you maybe?
Yeah, I'm about to launch. Actually about to launch in about a week. I'll have a page that offers all different types of things, everything from, specific relationship developmental skills from past life reading to transmissions from immortals to Neigong training. And I think you had that question. Neigong is internal power. Nidan is the internal alchemy. Qigong is a watered down interpretation of Neigong, and it's sort of like basically just in definition, just energy, Qi. So Qigong sort of basically is a generalization to help you sort of get an understanding or nature of what energy potential is. But Neigong is where you are able to, through your own mastery, obtain the ability to access everything at once. So you have a whole new refined definition of what multitasking is, because you're able to produce and amplify the consciousness across every place, person, or thing at the same time, which that means that instead of just having 3 or 4 things hovering on your computer screen, you could have a million icons giving the same distributed amount of attention and intention. And through that mastery, that means that healing, whenever I'm doing any type of like distant healing, I could have anywhere from 8 to 10 to 12 people in different parts of the world, all it's saying the same transmission and frequency that will still basically end in a form of healing.
Yeah. Boy, oh boy, there's a lot to learn, isn't it? And that is probably one of the big reason why we came here.
Right. Yeah. I
Yeah.
mean, it's about self-mastery and that returning to who you are, which is the ultimate goal of any Taoist alchemist, is to remember, is to return, and that completion, you return to whole. And definition, that's what healing is, being whole.
Yeah. Okay, well, we're out of time, but can I ask you to come back sometime? There's
Absolutely,
so
man.
much to talk about.
Absolutely.
We were only able to scratch the scratch on the scratch that was scratched into the scratch. So
I would love to. I would love to, and leave off where we started, go straight into the travels through Asia and all the things that go on there, and then
yeah,
furthermore go into, what was taking place within the incredible generational change within Chinatown in San Francisco, which is
yeah,
not just something out of Big Trouble in Little China, but there are depths of generational change and power and potency in the halls and streets of San Francisco that you have not even. I spent many years exercising and altering frequencies, because that particular place used to be a graveyard. They exhumed the bodies and then put the city on top of it. And
no,
so it
really.
is just filled full of like hauntings and a paranormal activity that you have not seen anywhere and will not see anywhere to the level and degree that you
Yeah.
find there in San Francisco.
Yep, I got the message that we need to close in the next about 10 seconds. So this was wonderful. Thank you very much for being with us. And if you liked what you heard, please subscribe. It's going to help us a lot. So I thank you very much. And until next time, be good to